Hello and welcome to FP&A and Finance Insights. I'm Jack Alexander. Just a brief word about this series and the YouTube channel, Financial Management and FP&A. My objective is that I have been blessed in many ways over the years, but especially in my accounting and finance career. I've had a career of 50 years in various positions in finance, and I've always worked with great people and great organizations, learned a great deal, and developed a focus, a habit on continual learning. So I've developed these short focus sessions on important topics to share them with you, and I hope that they're of value. The channel will include playlists listed there ranging from FP&A topics to career development in finance, of which this session is included, and valuation and capital structure and cost of capital. Many of the topics, illustrations, and models are based on my latest book, Financial Management, Driving Performance and Value, and a lot of the analysis and dashboards, Excel spreadsheets are included in an accompanying website for that book. Okay, today we're going to talk about presenting and communicating business information. This is part one of a two-part series. The playlist includes those topics that you've seen there. Today's topics will look at the objectives of financial analysis, the accounting mindset and stereotype. We're going to talk about best practices. We're going to discuss the value of pictures and graphics. We're going to talk about some tips to improve, and then we're going to do a summary and preview the next session. So one of the things that's really important as we step back and just think about the objectives of financial analysis, FP&A, performance management, is really to develop and provide information to help run the business and achieve the organization's objectives. We also want to participate in key decisions and earn that coveted seat at the table. So the critical thing here is that our analysis and our thoughts must be effectively communicated and understood by key managers and decision makers to be effective. It doesn't do any good if we create an outstanding analysis, but it's presented poorly and not understood by our clients, by the intended audience. So in many topics around performance management and FP&A, I use this image of an instrument cockpit panel. This happens to be from the space shuttle. And I emphasize 5 things that relate to CPM and FP&A. Real-time and predictive insights are here. We're not looking at the past exclusively. It's got a high visual impact, which is important for our topic today. Focus on the important measures. There's not a lot of extraneous information or measures presented there. It also looks outside the organization, not just focusing on the internal mechanisms. And then we allow managers to combine this information with their observation, experience, and intuition to effectively fly the mission. And what's important here is we don't hand the pilots a 50-page report of tables after the mission has been completed successfully or unsuccessfully, as it might be. So let's talk a little bit about the accounting stereotype. And I don't like this, but it's important for us all to recognize this and to react to this and to consider it when we are sharing information and working with peer groups. So we have been trained and educated to view the world through general ledger accounts and debits and credits. That's our portal to the world. Financial statements perhaps included as well. We're thinking about detailed requirements around revenue recognition principles. I often hear a big complaint about finance teams is they don't understand the business. They only care about the numbers, the financials. They're always busy closing the books and doing returns. I detest the term bean counter, but it's still used for inappropriately for many people who have risen well above this, but also is applied to people who fit this accounting stereotype. We don't want to be viewed as just being no, no, no. And we're often viewed as cold, dry, and impersonal and not related to the other departments, not related to the business or our customers. So I always like to think about the people that I think are good accountants that have an outstanding preparation and communication skills, and they're usually at the top of the organization. They're usually controllers, VP of finance, or CFOs. So our accounting orientation gets in our way. So we're trained to foot and cross foot. We're trained to be precise, to reconcile things to the dollar or the penny. Very quantitative orientation, less qualitative, less communication. We're very detail oriented. So we dive into the numbers as opposed to rising above them a bit and looking at the overall context, the big picture. Very technical. We often explain things as it's complicated. We hide behind GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, and we're often perceived as being negative. That is, we only offer criticism. We never talk about the things that are going right. So we can address all of these things as we think about improving our abilities. So again, the best analysis will fail if the results of that analysis are not communicated effectively to our clients or a targeted audience. We need to understand how decisions are made and how the human mind works. And this is a whole field called behavioral finance. If you're looking for a quick read that will open your eyes to this, grab a copy of Michael Lewis's The Undoing Project. He writes very well. He wrote Blindside, Moneyball, etc. But he talks about the role of the subconscious mind and biases that we don't even realize we have, including recency and optimism or conservatism. He talks about the role of intuition, management, hubris. He talks about implicit assumptions and how information, the way it's presented, can influence decision, especially what you present as a base case. So very, very good to open your eyes to the subject of behavioral finance, which will improve your ability to present and communicate. Know your audience. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Developing a messaging strategy. What are our key points? How are we going to deliver these? How many times will we have to reinforce this? Who are all the audiences we need to get to? How will we wind up ensuring that the message or the key actions that we've outlined get implemented? A very useful term, and sometimes words just capture a meaning that is great. I read that the hardest part about developing a presentation or writing a report is getting to an ugly first draft. That is, don't try initially to come up with a final project. Work with an outline. Start to get your thoughts down on paper. Start to pull the critical analysis together. And the first draft that you get to, you can review and rework, and that will ultimately lead to a good product. But the important thing is to get to that first ugly draft. And thinking of it that way, I think, helps us in terms of making progress early on. In terms of presentation, we want to rehearse and practice. We want to be familiar with the information, certainly, but we don't want to memorize what we're going to say. That comes off as insincere. We want to be conversational, and we want to think about what are key talking points. Think about key words that we want to share, key phrases that are important. And I like the Native American proverb listed here below. Tell me the facts and I'll learn. Tell me the truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. So clearly being able to create something that is memorable and that includes anecdotes and key elements will make this live on forever, or at least long enough for you to achieve your objectives. So best practices. In anything longer than a couple pages or slides, I prepare an outline as shown here. The first page would be an agenda outlining the discussion topics. Why is this important? Let's make sure that everybody understands what the objective of the session is, what the objective of the report is, the objective of the analysis. Let's go through how we're going to progress through the material. And this is helpful to the speaker, it's helpful to the audience, and it oftentimes avoids getting premature questions that you intend to cover later on in the presentation. Somewhat controversial is I include the executive summary that will be at the end of the presentation right up front. So I tell them, look, this is what I found, and this is the recommendation. These are some of the other things we've considered, and here's what we're going to talk about. Then the presentation content will distill all the analytical material to high-impact visual summaries and key findings. I don't include extraneous material. We'll pull that down, detailed spreadsheets, pull that down and put it in exhibits. Executive summary and recommended actions. Again, it will summarize the key points, the key takeaways, outline the recommended actions, perhaps some alternatives, and then open up for conversation. And again, a quote by Mark Twain here that rings true as well. The more time you have, the more you can make this concise and impactful and shorter. So give that some thought as you develop it. Don't wait until the last minute to prepare presentations or reports. Work on them early, get that first ugly draft done, and then work on improving them and developing a more concise version of that as you review it. Know your audience, extremely important. Are we going to be speaking to or sharing this with senior executives, a board of directors, labor unions, an all-associate meeting? Obviously, who the audience is has a huge role in deciding how you should present it and the pace at which you present it. What's their knowledge and understanding of subject matter? Do they have business and financial literacy at some level? What pace will they be able to absorb this material? Do I need to do sidebars or infomercials to explain some things they may not have been exposed to before? What's the level of interest and perceived importance on the part of the audience? So this is extremely important. And my first experience with this was as corporate controller. I was named acting CFO when my boss was asked to move on. And it was my first presentation to the board of directors as acting CFO. I was told I'd have 30 minutes, and I developed a presentation accordingly. And the board of directors was comprised of 4 CEOs of large corporations, 2 CFOs, and 3 PhDs, including one in finance, one in nuclear science, and the other one in management. Very intellectual, very quick studies, absorbed things, understood the subject matter, so I had to deliver the presentation in that manner. Later on that day, I delivered basically the same presentation, or at least a summary of the quarter's performance, to an all-associate meeting, and I had to take a different approach with that group, as you understand. We have many communication opportunities beyond formal reports and presentations. Every time we write an email and are sharing our thoughts or attaching an analysis or a presentation or our thoughts, we're communicating. Every report, every presentation, obviously, but also 2 really important ones that we should consider and be prepared for are the hallway conversations and the elevator pitch. And before I became CFO, I was a corporate controller, and before that, group CFO of one of the operating groups. And it seemed like I would always find myself in the elevator with the CEO or another senior executive. And they always had some question about some issue that I was working on or some analysis that our team had underway, and they wanted to know where we stood. And so these people do not want, and you don't have the time for a 10-minute conversation. So how can I communicate in 1 or 2 minutes or 30 seconds the nuts and bolts, the key elements of where we stood, what we had learned so far, and what some of the indicated actions were. So I began to think in terms of bullet points. And that became a very, very effective tool for me to use in developing presentations, but also in these verbal opportunities to communicate. And by the way, one of the critical things about communication is people's perception of our intellect is determined something like 80 or 90% by our ability to communicate. So if that doesn't provide some incentive for us to work on these areas, I'm not sure anything will. In developing models, and we got a separate video on developing effective business models, the traditional approach would be, hey, let's just, in the center there, the historical approach, let's just capture the data and then let's go ahead and process it and analyze it. But we recommend that you start out by defining what the objective and scope and who the client is of this analysis or model. And then also to the far right, how are we going to present and communicate this? Is it going to be a dashboard? Is it going to be a presentation? What reports are going to be developed? And building right into that Excel model or other software tool, build in the graphic presentations right into that model so that they come right out when we do that. So this will, defining the objective, the client, and developing the presentation up front will go a long way to, number one, saving time, but also making it much more effective and ensuring you'll be effective at communicating it. Best practices tell a story. I hear a lot of people on LinkedIn and elsewhere talking about storytelling and frankly creating the impression that we have to be clever and humorous like Mark Twain. And some of us may be, I don't think I am, but I consider telling a story really providing an overview of the analysis, identifying major assumptions, a progression of facts that are building your case, reviewing the results in a visual manner, really clearly stating key takeaways and indicated actions. It is very helpful to include interesting and emotional appeals and anecdotes or specific examples. So, for example, if you're talking about a decline in revenue, rather than just talk about it in the aggregate, mention a specific story or anecdote about a certain customer who is under economic and business pressure and has canceled or delayed orders. And by sharing these specific experiences, we can bring them to life and again, help people to remember these things after the presentation is over. This is an example of a presentation that I did a couple of years ago, which shows an effective way to communicate images with key takeaways. So this was a presentation on what's driving the deficit and debt in the US and in many other mature countries. And so there's a huge impact because of the birth rates and the life expectancy that's changed a lot over the last 50 years. And so these graphics are a great visual presentation. Everybody can see the trends, the scale, the magnitude of the changes, and then we're also presenting the key takeaways. We're interpreting that below. The analysis is seldom the best presentation vehicle. This is a terrific DCF valuation model. I've used a variation of this over the last 25 years, modified it. It works in many, many cases. Often is supplemented with other material, but it is a terrible presentation vehicle. And people's eyes glaze over if you attempt to present this. And they will focus on processing the numbers rather than understanding the dynamics and the important takeaways. So I strive to use that as an input to an overall valuation summary, where in the upper left we include the DCF analysis with other forms of valuation, recent trading ranges, the current price. We include a sensitivity analysis showing how the stock price would be impacted by changes in revenue growth or operating margins. Lower left, look at some scenario analysis. Always identify key assumptions because assumptions are critical to any analysis, especially valuation analysis. And then what are our takeaways? Summarize it for the group. So a few tips on delivering. Don't read the slides. Use a voiceover to complement the audience's visual sense. So they can read the slide. You can highlight key things. You can point them to certain things, and you can use really expressive language to have it be impactful. But they can read it, and you don't need to reread it to them. Introduce a slide. Maybe you need to talk about a specific graphic, what's on the X and Y axis, the trend over time. Walk through your observations. Again, very helpful to script out your talking points. Think about the best language you can use to get your point across in a concise manner. Prepare and rehearse, but don't memorize. Use executive summaries at the beginning and end of longer reports and presentations. Connect and engage with the audience. Make eye contact. Ask rhetorical questions. Move around if you're able to. Don't be tied to the podium or behind the laptop. Be conversational. Don't deliver the State of the Union speech here. Be talking to a group of executives or your peers. I like to avoid the use of pointers. I find them very distracting with them shaking on the screen. You can walk and point to the screen. That's more effective. If you're presenting in real time, be prepared to adjust time. That board presentation I was talking about, I was told that I would have 30 minutes. Being the last presentation, the last topic on the agenda, I was introduced and told I had 5 minutes. And what I did was turn to the executive summary and walk through that and asked if there were any questions. There were a couple. I went to those specific slides and answered those questions. Be as brief and concise as possible. Be respectful of people's times. Make sure you get the right people in the meeting, and you will do a good job. So, Mr. Murphy often shows up, so you got to be flexible and prepared and not get anxious if something goes wrong. Significant change and a lot of time, as we mentioned. Thinking about what Q&As, what questions might be asked, and developing a thoughtful response, just a couple bullet points, will make you much more effective in answering those questions and also give you confidence in your ability to answer them. I have had a number of IT problems in presentations, no projector, the presentation wasn't loaded, we had a power failure, the room wasn't right for the presentation. I had surprise participants. I thought I was presenting to a group of the HR team and the CEO walks in and sits down. Is there anything in there that's not appropriate for the CEO, or do I need to change the way I'm presenting things given that the boss's boss is in the room for these HR people? Anticipate potential adverse reactions, especially once you know the audience, who in there is going to be troubled by this. Watch your tone. Don't be critical and be balanced. A great way to do that is to say, here's what's going well, here's what needs to be improved. Creating visuals, what is best? We got a lot of different options. And so in the next video, number 2, we're going to talk about what video is best and how do you design the best graphics to get your point across. Improving our ability to communicate, some specific suggestions. Try and shift your focus from that of finance to a business perspective. Learn about the business. Learn about the strategy, customers, markets, competitors, products. Practice. Nothing replaces practice. Volunteer for opportunities to present. Prepare. Develop talking points. Practice. Walk through your presentation. Read it out loud. Time yourself. Think about your audience. Evaluate all of your FP&A products from a client perspective. So all reports, all dashboards, everything that you put out, presentations, do we properly utilize data visualization tools? Are we talking from a business perspective, or do we sound like a bean counter? Are they clear and concise? Are they providing utility? Are people using these? Do they find them useful? You can ask people what they think about these. And always consider enrolling in a speaking or presenting workshops. I have been fortunate to attend several, and they have always helped me to understand how I could improve. In summary then, 80% of the value of an analysis is in the delivery. If you can't deliver it effectively, the analysis will not be of value. The analysis is generally not the best delivery mechanism, and you can put effort into effectively communicating results that will increase your chances of being successful. Provide executive summaries. Think about educating non-finance managers. So if you're in a group, delivering to a group that isn't familiar with the subject matter, put infomercials in there, go off and explain a little bit what you're talking about. Here's what EBITDA is and why it's important and what the drawbacks to using it are, for example. And also consider having many training sessions for small groups to increase their financial acumen. Again, consider presentation training, and also the more you present, the better you get. And again, never pass on an opportunity to present. So please feel free to subscribe and like the channel. The book is a resource I would recommend for you as you continue to progress in your careers in finance and FP&A. And if you're interested, please follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks, have a great day, and all the best to you.